I'm leading my country toward breaking free from the control of the US dollar. With China's new payment system, Africa now has a chance to shape its own economic destiny. At the heart of this change is a young leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, making history. At just 37, Traoré is the president of Burkina Faso and one of the youngest heads of state in the world. His bold vision is to free Africa from Western dominance, especially the US dollar, which has ruled global trade for decades. He is teaming up with China, which has unveiled a massive plan to make Africa the first major hub for its global payment system. This initiative aims to boost the Chinese yuan and challenge the dollar's grip on world trade. Traoré sees it as a golden opportunity for Africa to take control of its economic future. Just last month, China convinced 53 of Africa's 54 nations to join a new trade framework, granting their exports 100% tariff-free access to China's enormous market. This is a game-changer, and Traoré's leadership is helping Africa seize the moment. For the first time in history, a country has brought nearly an entire continent into a united trade partnership. With 53 African nations on board, China is building a powerful alliance, and Burkina Faso is at the forefront. This partnership isn't just about selling coffee, cocoa, or minerals. It's about creating a new financial system where African nations can trade without needing the US dollar. Traoré believes this is the key to Africa's economic independence. The dollar has dominated world trade for years, but it brings challenges like high transaction fees and the constant threat of Western sanctions. China's Cross-Border Interbank Payment System (CIPS) allows African nations to trade directly in yuan, bypassing the dollar entirely. Backed by Traoré's bold vision, this move is shaking up global trade and putting Africa in the global spotlight. Since taking power in Burkina Faso in 2020 after a military coup, Traoré has become a symbol of hope for Africans who want to break free from Western influence. Inspired by the revolutionary legacy of Thomas Sankara, Traoré wants Africa to control its own resources and economy. He sees China's payment system and trade framework as a path to escape the dollar's dominance. He is pushing Burkina Faso to join CIPS and trade in yuan, saving money and reducing dependence on Western banks. He has already taken major steps like nationalizing gold mines and building a gold refinery to keep wealth within the country. These bold moves are inspiring other African leaders to reconsider their own financial systems. Traoré has openly criticized the way Western powers, especially the US, use the dollar as a tool of control. Many African nations struggle to get enough dollars for trade, forcing them to rely on Western banks and pay high fees. He warns that this system keeps Africa dependent and vulnerable. He also points to Western sanctions like those imposed on Russia, which showed that the US can freeze a country's money overnight. He believes CIPS offers Africa a way out, providing fairer and more secure trade options. His leadership is rallying African nations to demand economic independence, with China emerging as a willing partner. This shift is also fueled by the larger rivalry between the US and China. In recent years, under leaders like Donald Trump, the US has been unpredictable, slapping high tariffs and taxes on imported goods, including those from Africa. Trump's America First policy has largely ignored Africa, offering no meaningful trade deals. Traoré has called out this neglect, pointing to US tariffs as high as 30% on South Africa and 50% on Lesotho, which make it harder for African nations to export goods. In contrast, China is stepping in with open markets, large investments, and a new financial system. Traoré sees China as a partner that respects Africa's right to make its own decisions, unlike the US, which often demands political concessions. In exchange for aid, the US dollar's dominance is rooted in the SWIFT payment system, controlled by the US and Europe. SWIFT processes international payments, but for African countries it is costly and risky. A business in Africa can't sell goods to Europe in local currency, it must convert to dollars, then euros, incurring double fees, delays, and dependency on Western banks. Traoré points out that this puts Africa at a disadvantage, while also giving the West the power to cut countries off from trade entirely. In 2022, during the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Western powers froze $300 billion of Russia's assets, sending a clear warning to the rest of the world. For Traoré, this is proof that Africa needs alternatives like CIPS. CIPS is essentially China's version of SWIFT, allowing countries to trade in yuan instead of dollars, saving money and avoiding Western control. Over 4,900 banks in 187 countries now use CIPS, and African participation is growing fast. In June, South Africa Standard Bank became the first African bank to enable direct yuan payments with China, bypassing the dollar. Traoré wants Burkina Faso to follow suit, seeing CIPS as protection from sanctions and trade restrictions. With Africa's economies expanding rapidly, CIPS could become a major player in global trade, and Traoré is determined to make Africa a leader in this shift. Traoré praises China for offering a different kind of partnership, one that builds infrastructure, schools, and hospitals instead of just extracting raw materials. China's policy of non-interference in African politics makes it a more appealing partner than the West, which often ties aid to political reforms. China's duty-free access to goods from 33 of Africa's least developed countries, including Burkina Faso, helps African businesses grow. Traoré sees this as a way to strengthen industries like agriculture and mining, boosting self-reliance. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is also central to Traoré's vision. BRICS challenges the idea that the US dollar should be the only dominant currency, with countries like South Africa and Egypt leading the shift toward yuan-based trade, and others like Algeria and Nigeria invited to join. Africa could soon have its largest economies united under BRICS. This would give the continent a stronger voice in global finance, and Traoré is urging Burkina Faso to deepen its ties with the group. China's approach to Africa is also reshaping industries. For example, in Angola, China is investing $350 million to diversify its economy beyond oil by developing large-scale agriculture projects. Traoré wants to bring similar projects to Burkina Faso, expanding farming, reducing food imports, and creating jobs for young people. While China is building bridges, the US is pulling back, cutting foreign aid, closing diplomatic missions, and raising tariffs on African goods. Traoré argues this shows the US is not serious about Africa's growth. In contrast, China is opening markets and funding development, earning Africa's trust. Many Africans now see China as a respectful partner who supports their sovereignty. Unlike the West, Traoré's vision goes far beyond trade. It's about self-reliance. He wants Africa to produce its own food, process its resources, and control its own wealth. His policies like nationalizing gold mines and working with China to build factories are creating jobs and opportunities. Over 60% of Africans are under 25, and as a young leader himself, Traoré connects with the continent's youth, encouraging them to enter fields like technology, farming, and trade. The dominance of the US dollar is fading, and Traoré is preparing Africa for the future. Alternatives like gold, Bitcoin, and the yuan are gaining momentum. By embracing CIPS, African nations can trade freely without fear of sanctions. This shift also opens doors for digital assets and new investments. Moving away from the dollar won't be easy. The US is already threatening heavy tariffs on countries that abandon it. But Traoré believes the risks are worth the reward of long-term independence. His leadership is proving that Africa can chart its own course, stand up to Western pressure, and thrive in the new global economy. Africa is rising, and Traoré's partnership with China is helping make it happen. With vast resources, a young population, and growing economies, the continent has the potential to become a global powerhouse. This is more than a political shift. It's the beginning of a new era where Africa leads, rather than follows, in shaping the world's future.